Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. Every week, we try to bring you the stories of people who are making a difference in the world in some small or large way, locally, globally, however it seems to work. We believe that, that people have the power to make all kinds of differences in their communities, locally, globally, and digitally. And that in doing so, they find that joy that comes from serving others. We're part of Rotary International, 1.2 million members in 36,000 clubs around the world. And we are a particularly interesting, perhaps little model for Rotary. We're an online asynchronous club, and so because of that, we get to connect with people at times that work for them, which we think is kind of cool. And today we are connecting with Phillip Lan. Phil is going to tell us about Bay Valley Tech. You read his intro coming in. You read a little bit about the work that they are doing, and I will hand it over to him so that he can give the far more experienced version of how this very interesting educational model works. Phil, we are really pleased to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the invitation. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I have Rotary to thank for developing my desire to be involved with community service. As a high schooler, I was president of our local Interact Club, and so got to meet and was inspired by quite a few folks where I grew up who are serving and giving to the community, and so that played a large role in sort of my career path and our organization and what we are about. So in a nutshell, what Bay Valley Tech is doing is trying to help more people who have been largely left out of the tech economy to be able to participate in it, right? We know that tech jobs are some of the highest paying jobs in our region right now, but large tech companies have just had a very, very tough time increasing diversity, bringing groups that traditionally had not come from families or communities who have worked in tech into tech jobs. And at the same time, we are experiencing a very severe tech talent shortage across the entire country. Many of our companies are having their growth throttled a bit just because, we have a million unfilled tech jobs in this country right now that's going to be quickly moving to 1.8 million shortfall here in 3 years. And so there just are not enough tech workers and digital workers coming into our local economy. We graduate roughly 80,000 computer science majors a year for a million plus tech worker shortfall today, right? So Bay Valley Tech was formed to try to help folks and create more opportunities for them in regions that are not heavy into tech, and also in groups within Silicon Valley that have traditionally been left out, right? Large tech companies, for example, are see maybe 3% of their tech workers are Latino, right? And in California, I think roughly 40% of our workers here are Latino. And so, Bay Valley Tech is really having a bit of an impact in terms of, making those changes today. So with that, let me just show you a few slides of what's happening, what's going on. So first two pictures here are some of our students and some of our community sponsors and the coalition that has come along to try to help push everything in the right direction. So we do know that right now, regional tech hubs are creating some of the best paying jobs in the country, right? Manufacturing job growth peaked in 1978 in this country. And so the best paying jobs are really, and a lot of times involved or require digital skills or are digital and tech companies, right? So this is happening. It's creating a situation where regionally the winners continue to win, regions like the Bay Area, Seattle, Washington, D.C., Austin. Other communities like Detroit, right? Parts of Ohio, parts of the Central Valley in California are really having trouble, getting their tech economies jump-started. And then even within Silicon Valley, there's pockets where folks have been largely left out and are having difficulty breaking into the tech economy. So, right now we're moving into a situation of the haves and have-nots, right? Is with regards to tech careers and tech pay. So that's a little bit of the macro environment. We do know that tech companies will follow the workforce, right? So it doesn't matter what your background is. If you develop the skills and you're in the wrong part of the Bay Area or you're in another area, tech companies will come looking for you because the tech worker shortage is so severe today. So what is the potential economic impact of helping more people transition into the workforce? So simple math, one person averaging $150,000 a year in a new tech job over 30-year careers is going to pull 4.5 billion into your local neighborhood, or 4.5 million into your local neighborhood, into your local community, into your city. If we're able to help train 1,000 new tech workers in your part of the city or your neighborhood, that nets out to 4.5 billion in direct salaries. Tech workers, tech jobs do tend to result in larger economic impact, people buying cars, going out to eat, creating graphic design jobs, attorney jobs, etc. Right? Overall economic impact over 30 years could be as much as 21 billion for your local economy. So Bay Valley Tech, what we do, services we provide, right? Free tech training, we have internship programs, we do a lot of outreach to employers to make sure they're part of our coalition, help to develop curriculum, are on our advisory board. They partner with us on internship programs, and they obviously hire our talent, right? So it's a very good win-win-win that we've been able to create for both the employers and the students, as well as the local communities in which we operate. So in fact, there's a fourth win here in that a lot of our educational dollars and state and federal dollars that are earmarked for workforce development, some of those dollars are not parked in initiatives today that are as effective or deliver as high of an ROI as our officials would like to see. And so Bay Valley Tech has been able to come along and help them with that as well. So in addition to training, internship, tech ecosystem building, right? We operate and innovation centers, tech co-working spaces, so that we can put the students in the same physical location as these entrepreneurs, these hiring companies. And so that facilitates the relationship building and the networking to be able to help these folks, new workers transition into the tech workforce. So we have a very unique training model, I believe. So the traditional way that organizations would help create 1,000 new, skilled workers in a community is we have a instructor and they might be able to teach, 40 people a year. And in 25 years, they would, be able to train 1,000 workers, right? What Bay Valley Tech is doing essentially is that we're training the trainers, right? We're teaching a person to fish, and then we're going to go teach them how to teach others how to fish. This works very well with regards to digital skill sets because there's a lot of resources, lessons that are already out there that are very, very good. And folks can get a lot of this work done independently on their own time. But folks who are trying to get through these programs and these educational programs and this curriculum, it's kind of like a 5% success rate right now. We have hundreds of people in this country trying to learn how to code independently, and very few of them actually make it all the way to the finish line. And the reason is it can be complicated enough that a person working individually can get stuck or will get stuck frequently, right? Many, many times over the course of a month. And that can be discouraging. So a person working independently after getting stuck 18 times, they might begin to feel like, oh, my brain's not made for this, or I'm just not smart enough for this. And that's not really the case. It's just that if they had somebody to get them over the hump, right? It's a little bit like when you're studying algebra and you can get stuck. And if you're in a situation where you can't figure this problem out, you could stare at the thing for 3 years and you'll never figure it out. But if your buddy leans over and says, hey, move the X from here to there, it's like, oh, okay, right? So if we have instructors, we have coaches, we have folks that learned some of these technologies 6 months before we did, and we're surrounded by a whole group and a community who is very encouraging and that can come along and help you understand, like, hey, you can do this because, you know, I was a truck driver 11 months ago. Now I have a job as a professional software developer. If I can do it, you can do it too, right? So if you're able to learn in that environment where there actually are employers who are mentors, who are anxious for you to get to the finish line because they want to offer you jobs, right? Then it works very well. And because when we train 100 students 1 year, the next year we potentially have 100 volunteer teaching assistants through our program, right? So we've created a community and a culture where people don't come to Bay Valley Tech just to they come here to give too, right? We want everybody who's involved in our community, who receives these services from us for free, to be of the mindset that they're going to look for opportunities to turn around and help the next person in their community. In fact, our agreement, our student agreement, includes that people who partake in our services and are coached and helped, they are required to volunteer and give back to the community and to give back to other students in the Code Academy. And so it creates a situation where folks can pay it forward, and communities can, and neighborhoods can then begin to lift themselves up by their own bootstraps without requiring a lot of help, right? And so this model of, you know, we kind of joke that it's sort of like the multi-level marketing of software development. And if one can train five can train 25, 125, 625, you know, over 3,000, over 15,000, you can scale very quickly. And so instead of taking, you know, 15 years to get to, or 25 years to get to 1,000 new workers, we can do this in a matter of 5. And so we actually are doing this in some communities right now in the Bay Area and some other regions in California. So employers love our program. They are hiring our students and our interns left and right now. And the students that they're hiring are ending up going to these organizations, making an impact, and getting promotions. Folks that come in under temporary contracts are being offered permanent full-time positions. And so the whole ecosystem is working very well. And at the end of the day, it's providing a lot of value to students who want to work hard and change their lives for the sake of their families and their communities. And this is working very well for employers that need this talent to be able to grow and help our regional and national economies. One of the really unique things we're finding with our program is this ability to pull people into the tech economy that have traditionally struggled to get in, or didn't even realize that they, you know, it was realistic for them to be able to make that transition. A lot of folks grow up in regions or neighborhoods where they don't have a lot of family or friends working in tech and really haven't thought much about potentially pursuing those careers. So, you know, 50% of our students are coming from households that make, you know, less than 40,000 a year, right? And in California, that's pretty hard to get by on that. And you know, a third of our students are women, over 40% are Latino. And so this program is really achieving what we had hoped it would in terms of increasing diversity in tech. And we are reaching into pockets that traditionally we're not going to go into tech, and that, you know, by and large, most of our community leaders had not thought could make it into tech, right? So what we tend to do as an organization at Bay Valley Tech is to be, what we have been able to do is build coalitions, bring other organizations, and from employers to workforce development agencies. Every county has one. Every county has a Office of Education, right? Has a local university, has employers, has other organizations that are interested and vested in the success of the community and the talent of the community. So we've been able to build these coalitions effectively and get everybody to push in the same direction for the benefit of our students and our local employers and our communities. So list of, not just sponsors and employers, but also community leaders that support some of the programs that we run here. So we just started this, honestly, just a few years ago, but making a lot of progress. And now some of the media is beginning to catch on to what's going on. And so in this past year, in 2021, we have expanded very rapidly to the Bay Area. And now a large percentage of our students who are applying, who are coming to us, are coming in from the Bay Area. We get over 1,000 applicants a year to our program, and that's actually growing at a pretty quick, pretty fast clip right now. So in addition to training and employer engagement activities, as I mentioned, we work very hard to support and grow the local coalition in each community, to grow the tech ecosystem. And that involves sponsoring different organizations in the communities that we work in. Women Tech Makers is a Google Developer Groups initiative. And so we support them with dollars and instructors and speakers and facilities and things like that to help grow that organization and to help inspire more girls and women to consider tech careers. We run software developer internships to get these projects under the students' belt so that they're more employable. We've helped to create ag tech summits and looked at certain regions and what's a key competitive advantage for certain regions like the Central Valley, where it's ag rich, right? We realize that training more software developers will help them to be able to capture or take the lead or drive the growth of the ag tech industry, right? So hackathons, both at the professional and at the high school levels, help to inspire more students. And we, partner and help organizations like Free Code Camp that are, helping people with resources to be able to get into these careers for free. So with that, I'm going to end this presentation here, and thank you very much, everyone, for your time. If anybody has any questions or would like to get involved with our organization to help support it, or have any introductions that might be helpful to expand our work to be able to help more students, we would love to hear from you. And go ahead and give me a call or shoot myself or Dory an email. Her email address is info@bayvalleytech.com. So thank you again for your time, and let me know if anyone has any questions.
Wonderful, Phil. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's good to have the chance to talk about an innovative educational program, and especially one centered in the Central Valley. interested in maybe exploring that a little bit more as we get a little farther into this.
Yeah,
So,
we're actually very much centered in the Bay Area now.
all right.
Yeah, so we actually have more potential partners, more students coming from the Bay Area even than the Central Valley today.
So one reason for that clearly is going to be a difference in population, but can you also describe how the mission that Bay Valley Tech has in a place like the Central Valley, where the workforce development has such an impact, right? You know, if you're developing tech jobs, where you're retaining that mission, working here in the San Francisco Bay Area as well. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I'm not sure I quite understand.
Sure. Let me repeat the question. So or rephrase it. So when you got started, I believe a lot of it started in the Central Valley, and
yes,
and the idea there is that this is a place that needs to develop more people who are capable of pulling down, you know, kind of notably more substantial salaries.
That means more sort of like digital talent, right? More talent with modern skill sets that are in demand, and then also a region that needs, you know, better paying jobs and more employers, right? Yeah. That's why we started it in the Central Valley. Okay. But very quickly, what we're finding is that our work is providing a huge benefit to Silicon Valley and to Bay Area based tech companies, and I'd be happy to, you know, elaborate on that if that would be
absolutely helpful. Actually, that's at the core of the question. So if what you're trying to do at this point is to bring more people into Silicon Valley companies, recognizing that their talents could take them in a lot of different directions.
Yep.
Is that also within the mission to bring more underrepresented talent into into this field? I mean, does that carry over in the Silicon Valley as well?
Yep. Yeah. So I spent 20 years living and working in the Bay Area, and one of the things that myself and my colleagues have noticed is that Silicon Valley is very diverse, but it's not very diverse, right? There are certain populations, certain groups of our friends who really are not very well represented in the tech economy. And so there are large groups in certain neighborhoods, right? I mean, think about, say, that corridor between Oakland, San Leandro, Hayward, right? There's the population mix, the tech worker percentages are quite a bit different than out in the peninsula or in the South Bay, or even in Fremont, Pleasanton type areas, right? So certain regions we feel like could benefit substantially, right, from an increase in digital workers in their neighborhoods and in their cities.
One of the most interesting things to me in learning about the work that you guys are doing had to do with, okay, so you have not only people who have gone through this 7-month, I believe, program to develop their skills. They're then on the hook to help because they've had this training for free.
Yes.
But there's also a space for this. You have a co-working space in one of your locations that allows companies to actually help with and find talent as well. Can you speak about that a bit?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do is we operate the co-working space because, it's good for students to have an easy place where they can study and they can, network and collaborate. And the co-working space is, a service that we provide for tech companies and entrepreneurs, right? It creates a space for them to be able to help each other and, have some synergies and improve their chances of success, right? Startups are very challenging. So any help you can get, any advice, any connections you can make, right? So you're going to find that in a tech-centric co-working space much better than just if you had your own office somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, right? So the co-working space becomes attractive for both the students and the companies, the employers, right? But then when we put the students in the same building as the co-working space, as the tech companies, not only can we support these startups and these tech companies with flexible space and community of entrepreneurs, we can actually support them with a pipeline of talent, right? Many tech companies, tech startups today are sort of based and driven by software talent, right? So the closer they can get to a pipeline, I think the better for them, right? And the better it is for students. And what we do is then we use the membership fees, the money for rent, right? And we can funnel that back into more scholarships for more students. Now we've created a positive feedback loop, right? Where revenue from companies is training more students, and more students is helping companies increase their revenues, right? And now it's a win-win, right? So yeah, so that is the vision, and we're beginning to implement that in certain cities. And right now we have a plan to open some co-working space in Sunnyvale and then some other cities in the Bay Area in 2022.
Fantastic. So in looking at the 5-year plan for getting things launched, which or where is your location that has been in motion the longest?
In the Central Valley in Modesto.
Okay, and what year is it in its progress?
Year number 4.
Fantastic. Okay, so in looking especially at that space where you've had like this extra time to really develop all this, I think about the work that you and Dory are doing. Dory, by the way, thank you for joining us as well. It's good to have like a team, kind of come in for the presentation. And I think about, okay, when things are offered for free, there is always a bit of a worry that the people who are accepting the offer won't, in not having a certain amount of skin in the game, may not. But you were talking about a very low percentage of finishing in a lot of other, let's call it competitive environments where code.org, whatever it might be, online, people trying to complete. How do you see completion rates increasing over time? Like where do they start with your first year? Where are they now?
So a significant portion of our students are able to at least get through our first 1 or 2 couple of certifications, right? So what we see is that if you learn HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, like you're somewhat employable. If you get JavaScript under your belt, like you're very employable, right? Certainly if you learn a framework like Angular, you learn backend APIs. Right now you've got a few projects under your belt, right? The more employable, the more you get through, the more employable you are. But we have plenty of folks that don't complete the program and they get job offers while they're in process, right? So if you say 5% of people trying to do self-study on these free online lessons, right? If we leveraging our program with live instruction and coaches, right? So remember earlier we said probably 80,000, like we as a country, all of our universities put together, produce 80,000 computer programmers a year, right? So say there's roughly 300,000 people trying to learn how to code, and 5% of them make it to the promised land. Even if we could get just 25% of them to the finish line, you move that needle by 20 percentage points. We've been able to add 60,000 programmers to the country. Right. Our program actually has a higher completion rate than that. So even a little bit of tiny success, right, off a base that large has a significant impact on any community, any state across the country, right? So that's what we're seeing today. Okay, so good. If I could add another point,
sure,
if that's okay. So as you mentioned, we started this effort in this initiative in an effort to help the folks from the Central Valley, right? Because some people don't understand. They think of the Central Valley as being part of California, and we always think of California as being expensive, fairly well educated, et cetera, right? So, studies have shown that, out of say 300 and, some odd cities across California, right? Cities like Merced, California, Modesto, Stockton, in this quarter that's, sort of agriculturally rich, is at the very, very bottom of the list in terms of college attainment, right? So the skilled labor in certain regions in California and the median household income is actually lower than states that we would expect to be much lower than California, right? Like the median household income in certain parts of the Central Valley is not on par with Austin or Denver. It's on par with Missouri, right? And folks don't realize that there are certain regions of California that need a lot of help. There's 6.5 million people that live in the Central Valley. That's bigger than 30 other states in the country, right? And so that's why we started here in an effort to help this. But what we're seeing is that in the Bay Area, there's pockets of people who have, as I mentioned, been left out of the tech economy. That's a tragedy for them and for their families. But not only is it a sort of personal or neighborhood tragedy, it's actually holding back growth of a lot of our job creators, right? A lot of our tech companies. I don't know if you saw the recent data, but of the 500 fastest growing tech companies in this country, over 20% are located in the Bay Area. Whereas the Bay Area only has 2.5% of the country's population, right? So the Bay Area is so effective at creating jobs for us. And many of these companies today are being held back because of a lack of tech workers, right? So if we can move a group who already live in the Bay Area, from one type of occupation to another type, that's going to create a lot of jobs for the entire country and create more economic productivity. That's going to be a huge win-win. So as we began to reach out to folks in the Bay Area, we found that there's just a huge hunger, right? Because in the Central Valley, one of the things we have to do is evangelize as we offer our free training. A lot of folks in the Central Valley don't know people working in tech, and there's a sense of like, well, that's neat that you're helping to do this, but are there really tech jobs, right? Like, do they really pay that well? And we have to have a lot of these conversations. Whereas in the Bay Area, when we started letting folks know, they're like, oh my gosh, I know people, right? Like they were making 80, now they're making $150,000, $170,000 a year. Like, the only questions we get asked from Bay Area people is, are you sure this is really free, right? And it's like once they find out that it's for real, that the program's for real, that we're supported by, County Office of Education, corporate sponsors, local banks, they're like, where do we sign up? Let's get to it. And so it's been the growth of number of applicants and interest in students in the Bay Area in 9 months, it's caught up with what took us, 3.5 years to build in the Central Valley, right? And so the other interesting thing is we see that a lot of Bay Area companies are leaving California, right? We can't find enough tech workers. Let's go find tech workers in Boise or Austin or whatever. So here we have all these tech companies who could be helping fellow Californians, right, with jobs, but they're finding that maybe the talent mix is not appropriate, so they're taking our California tech jobs out of state, right? And in doing so, they're essentially going and investing their dollars in other regions. And I'm all for helping everybody across the country where we can, but on the other hand, there still is large chunks of the population in California that could still use our help, right? And so you look at, some of these large tech companies, they've announced that they're going to open offices in 9 other states, but they've stepped over the potential labor pool in Hayward or Oakland or, East Palo Alto or Stockton or Modesto to get to Washington, D.C. or to get to, Chicago to open offices out there, right? And so in doing so, like, you invest in Austin enough years, enough decades, and no knock on Austin. I love Austin. I have great friends there, but essentially Silicon Valley ends up creating a competitor in Austin, right? And the investors here who want to invest in startups, now they got to go compete with Austin investors, right? And things like that. Whereas if the companies in the Bay Area invested in the Central Valley or in the East Bay, right, we're essentially expanding in Silicon Valley, right? And what companies that have moved out to Modesto has found out is, well, that actually helps us with retention of our key employees too, right? Because if you take a vice president of software, a director of software development, and you say, look, we've opened offices in 3 other states, and part of your job is you need to be traveling back and forth, right? And so when you come to work for us, say goodbye to your kids, say goodbye to your family, and right, you're all in, you live at the airport. After a while, you might get a call and say, hey, look, I found another job that allows me to stick closer to home, right? And if that tech company, that Bay Area company, part of their pitch was, hey, our software dev shop is not in Colorado. It's 45 minutes away. It's an hour and 10 minutes away. Like, you could collaborate with the team. They could be out here for the monthly meeting, all hands deck meeting, whatever, right? And everybody could be back home in time for dinner, and there's a closer connection, but yet it is essentially a offsite dev office, right? That's a key competitive advantage in terms of, retaining talent, right? And we've seen these tech companies invest billions to try to, create a few affordable housing units, right? So some companies are building 20,000 more affordable housing units in the Bay Area, which is great. But over the last 10 years, the Bay Area has created 1 million more jobs, right? So 20,000 can end up being a drop in the bucket. And if you push to try to create 500,000 more housing units in the Bay Area to meet demand, freeways, I used to live in the Bay Area, right? We know freeways, bridges, infrastructure could not handle that many new houses. Plus, folks who have already bought their homes, a lot of times they're going to sort of revolt if you try to put affordable housing right next to their house, right? And there's all sorts of challenges where, sometimes the solution is just to be 45 minutes away for that next office. And now all these people can buy their own affordable houses without being subsidized, right? So the Central Valley really, we started this effort to help the Central Valley, but what we are seeing now is that actually Silicon Valley, actually the Bay Area needs the Central Valley as much as the Central Valley needs the Bay Area, if that makes sense.
It does. And probably a good place for us to wind things down. I'll hand it back to you for a final word in a minute, but for everyone who has joined us for this recording, thank you very much for taking time and interest in the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. A little farther down the page, there's a place where you can let us know that you are here. Please do so. We're always happy to send you a quick note just thanking you for joining us. And then at the bottom of the page, there is a forum, the Discuss forum. And by adding your thoughts there, that is one of the ways that we as an online and asynchronous club engage with each other. So we'd love to know what you think of this presentation, what you think of the different pieces of our meeting, and we welcome your even replying to messages that are there as well. So with that, Phil, I'll hand it back to you for a final word.
Great. Thank you again. And again, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak and to tell you about what's going on and the services that we provide. So as I mentioned earlier, if you know of anybody that might be, willing or interested in joining the effort, whether, It's as a volunteer, as a coach, to help us, advise in terms of curriculum development. If your company has a budget to sponsor programs like this that help the community, we love introductions. Also, if you know anybody who is a student, right, who is an adult student over 18, please let them know about our program. We have an online application. They can fill it out very quickly. They'll get an email with a link to some prerequisite materials. They get through that, and then our admissions committee will give them a call and get them on their way. And our program is a part-time program. We do the live instruction portion in the evenings, so it allows people who are working full-time to be able to get through this program. So again, thank you very much, and you guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you. And for everyone, we'll see you next week.